Recording.
We
$10.
lost our Yehuda.
$10. Okay.
All right. Good morning, everybody.
Good morning, Rabbi.
All right. So what am I talking about when I said we lost our Yehuda? So let's go over our case yesterday.
Oh,
Was the Yehuda from a case yesterday?
Yeah. We were here yesterday now.
No.
Okay. Yeah. Eddie was the Yehuda in this case. All right. So we had a case, right? We're talking about people that cannot be made for on behalf or regarding a matter because they'll be nogea b'davar. So one of the items we said a person would be nogea b'davar.
He did not take his meds today.
So one of the
Welcome.
one of the ways a person can be nogea b'davar is if, let's say, I sell something and I have a creditor who's coming. So the creditor, I want to go ahead and have that item. I want to go have and have the item remain in that guy's hand, so my creditor can go ahead and take it from him. If the guy who I sold loses it, then the creditor doesn't come back to me, and I don't want that. So, all right. So here was the case. So we had a difference between a case of where the item being sold was land versus the taltlin, versus a cow or a garment. Now, so what was the case? Yeah, I think these tossals. These have been there like 2 weeks.
No, I mean, it's
So now,
what's gonna happen with this hand?
now, so here's the case. So we wanted to drop a case like this. So I stole a land from Mayor. I stole Mayor's land and I sold it to Avrami. I don't know if that was the case we did yesterday, but that was what happened. I stole from Mayor and then I sold it to Avrami. Then all of a sudden, Yehuda is making a claim that was my land. It was never Mayor's, right? Who was Shimon in the Gemara, right? It was never Mayor's. So Yehuda is saying that. So if I go ahead and so now in this case, I stole land from Mayor. So Mayor wants to go ahead and testify that it remains with Avrami. You know, this Avrami is not Yehuda's. Why? Because once it's his, then he'll be able to say it was stolen from me, and then he'll get it back. So therefore, he wants the land to remain. So that was the case. We said he was nogea b'davar. So the Gemara says, well, I don't understand. So top for men dalet and aleph. Why do you have such a case where a guy stole it and then sold it? Why did you say Belukim and Begazlan? We're talking about when the Gazlan still has it. In other words, like this. We'll say Bob, right, in this case, because I don't want to choose someone who dies, right? Bob is the thief. Well, eventually we'll get to it. So Bob is,
Who's dying?
Yeah, we'll see the Gemara, right? So Bob goes at it and steals something from Mayor, all right? So Bob has it, and all of a sudden Yehuda comes and says, hey, it's mine, right? And so Mayor wants it to remain in my hand, right? Or in Bob's hand, excuse me. Because then once it's Yehuda's out of the picture, just Bob, then Mayor will prove that Bob stole it from him. Yeah. So why say it in the case of the gossip, right? And he had the same difference. The Gemara says, Mishum Deka boy missing the Seifa. Because if we want to teach the Seifa, what was the Seifa? Because Mafaloi Parabachloi Talis, in the case of where it was a cow or a talis, he could go ahead and in that case, he would be able to go ahead and testify, right? Right, he would be able to testify. That's why the dafka machar, right? Only in a case of where it was sold to Havi and Yeush Vishina Rishus. There was Yeush. Once Bob stole it from Mayor, right? That was the Yeush who stole it, and then the Vishina Rishus, he sold it to a third party. Once it goes to a third party, then Mayor can no longer get it. If Mayor can no longer get it, he's not nogea b'davar. But if he didn't sell it, the hajile, then the item would go back. So in other words, it would be just like land can go back. In other words, if it was stolen from me, he can go ahead and take it back. Right. And if he goes ahead and takes it back, then the creditors can get it. So too, in the case of if the item is just stolen, right, that would be able to be returned. But if it was stolen and then sold, right, so you can't get the item back. So therefore, Tanarisha Nami Machar, therefore the Reish also a Machar. The safe and Nami, the Hida Miyayish Megufe, Midami Miyayish. Okay, and Chanami. So Mayor can't or Mayor can't get the shirt back, but he should be able to go get and get the money back. So it's the same difference. He wants it to remain in his hand so he can go ahead and sell the shirt to get the money. It says, right? When the Gazlan actually died, Bob died, right? And therefore, Bob died. So the argument over here is not that Bob would pay Meir back, rather that Bob died and his kids, Meir wants it back for them. So in that case, he wouldn't be able to go ahead and take it back because he dies. Now we learn in the Mishnah. But a person goes ahead and steals something, then feeds his children to it, and he leaves it to them. The Peturim Mishalim, and then he dies. He's Patur Mishalim because there was a Yeush. There was when it was stolen, and there was Shinu Rishus. So Gemara says, "I Veluk maybe Yerish." I understand. Why, if that's the case, so why do you have the case of where it was sold? Just if the buyer's the same thing, just say it was the guy died, right? So is there Hanifa? Yeah, first word. Right. So do you have a rishus yirish rishus lekech shapir? Okay, so it makes sense if you hold that the rishus of the yirish is not like a buyer, right? Not like a buyer, he's the same as his father, right? Ella Laman Dem, according to the opinion who holds the rishus yirish rishus lekech, a person inherits is the same thing as a buyer. So just like the buyer, you can't get it back. So too, like we've been saying, you can't get it back from the yirish. So why do you have to say in such a scenario like that? Who says why? Rav Sheshes, why'd you explain a case of where we're talking about the guy stole it and sold it? Just say the guy stole it and died. Michael, so Elaman Demer Shusi have dummy Michael. What do you say that? The other further barrage kashale. Buy first another question about it. Right? If you look at the Brisa, right, which was the top of Mem Gimel Amid Beis, so over there the reasons were given. It's said over there because he has a chrayas by Sada and Bias, and he doesn't have a chrayas by Para and the Talis, right? Right? It should be the whole difference is whether it's chayzer or not. Just like you're saying, the difference is the difference between a house and the garment is the garment isn't chayzeris because it was stolen and then sold, and the house is chayzeris because the house remains wherever it was at. So Ella, therefore, let's go ahead and give a new terrace. Now the Gavshesha. So what was the scenario where a case where a guy can go ahead and be testify when it comes to a para or a talis, but cannot be testified when he sold a house or a land. So Ella Kidarabin Bar Shmuel, Damarabin Bar Shmuel, Mishmei Shmuel, Hamaycher Sada the Chaver Shalom Bachrais. One who goes out and sells a field to his friend without any warranty. I'm not. If it's taken away, don't look at me. Don't come back to me. Ain't made. I can't go ahead. So if I go ahead and I sell Mark a piece of land, and I say, Mark, I'm selling it to you. There's no Chicago title, whatever it is, you're taking risk. Mark says, no problem. And then all of a sudden, Mayor's coming to claim, hey, this is my land. I can't go ahead and testify then. Why? Because if I would have taken out a loan from Alan 2 months before that, so now no one wants to be a person to borrow money and not pay back. So at least when I borrow money from Alan, I had land. So therefore, I want to make sure that the land stays with Mark so that Alan can at least go ahead and get his land back from the loan that he gave me. Even though, yes, I messed over Mark by selling him so much I didn't own, which would take away from my creditor. Nevertheless, right, I cannot testify because I have an interest in that because I want the land to remain with Mark and away from someone else's claim in order for my Balchov. So Amy, Dafka buys the southern Dafka over there, only a house or a field. Aval para of a talis. But however, when it comes to a paratalis, not just even talking about a case where I sold something regular without making mention anything. In other words, over there, where in this case that when I go ahead and when Alan took the loan out for me 2 months before I sold something to Mark, so there was no lien on, let's say I sold Mark a nice coat. Right, there was no lien on the coat. So if I borrowed money from Alan, right, I borrowed $1,000, and Alan says, "Okay, well, I see you have a nice fur coat. Maybe I'll go ahead and collect it from that." That doesn't work if it's stomach, right? There's no lien on my metaltlin. And even in the case, let me buy this stuff my time what's reason metaltalin because it's movable objects. Metaltalin lebal chayv lemishtabi. And when and movable objects are not liened or mortgaged against a loan. And even if I say I will pay you back, Alan, from even from the clothes off my back, i.e., my coat, these two banayu. That's only when I still own the coat. Aval less of banayu, but if I sold it, certainly you wouldn't be able to get into this case. So not only that case, movable objects, you wouldn't be able to get it. Ella afilu also apaitaki nami. Even if I said, Alan, if I don't go ahead and pay you the $1,000 back, you can go ahead and collect it from this coat. Even in that case, nami lo. Even in that case, I wouldn't be able to go. There's no lien on it. If there's no lien on it, therefore, I have zero interest in recovering it from Mark, whether or not it's, Mayor claims it was stolen or not. I don't care if Mark has it because it doesn't benefit me for my creditors. My time, or what's the reason? The Rava. If I go ahead and I borrow money from Alan goes, "How can I pay back?" I said, "I don't know, but I have my slave over here, Avrami, right? So my Avrami, he's an apotiki. So now when his slave is made an apotiki, right? So it's known. Therefore, if someone wants to go ahead and buy Avrami from me, if Ozzy approaches me and wants to buy Avrami, so he's going to know that Avrami is mortgaged to my loan from Alan if I don't pay back. So he's going to take a risk. So and then I go ahead and sell it. Then the Balchom, Alan could go ahead from Ozzy and take Avrami from him. Why? Because in Shor v'Chamro, but let's say when Alan says, "Hey, $1,000, I can pay it back." I says, "Oh, you go ahead, go ahead and collect from this fur coat." And then I sell that fur coat to Ozzy. Alan cannot go ahead and seize the balcoat, seize the fur coat. Why is that? What's the difference between Avrami, who's the Eved, as made in a potiki that you could collect from him, and versus a coat that does not, right? Why? My time, a high east like kola, high less like kola. When you make an Evan Apaitiki, it's one of a kind, right? And therefore, it's a known thing. So therefore, if Ozzy's going to go ahead and buy an Evan from me, he should do a little bit due diligence, right? But a fur, you'll never have a coat. There won't be a call about a coat. Therefore, Ozzy will have no idea. And therefore, we don't want people buying movable objects that only to have those taken away. So therefore, there's a takana that metalton do not go back unless there was some sort of a paitiki on something that creates a coal, like an Evan.
Is there like a registry in the bake thing that gives it the coal? Or?
Yeah, I was trying to figure. I saw it was like one of a kind. Each one's like unique versus like it's like a person versus like a coach, which is not a person. So therefore, what we create.
Is it the individual, or is it the fact that bake thing had something to do with it, or?
Let me just see.
Three people know.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know.
Okay.
Yeah, all right. So the Gemara says, third of the way down, and Memdal Beis, so there's a new halacha. Let's bring this out. Let's say I go ahead and acquire land. So land, a person, a creditor, can go ahead if Alan lends me money, $1,000, and he says, "Okay, the time I have a parcel of the Allens, right? Team Allen lends me $1,000, and at the time of the loan, I have a piece of land. And subsequently, I sell the land to somebody else, and I don't go ahead. I default on the loan. They can go ahead and back. They got like the first lien on it. They got the first mortgage, right? They're the first on it, on the title. But but we're not able to closing. But let's say like this. Let's say I have a bicycle. So bicycle is metaltalin. There's no lien on it. But if I acquire the bicycle the same way that the guy who buys the bicycle right now is the same way as through the ground, right? And I say that he can go ahead and acquire the land, and with the land also be metaltalin. So then the lien also goes on the metaltalin, and if that's the case, then perhaps this para, right, this cow would be lien to the loan, right? Damaraba akne metaltalin aga mekarki kadi mekarki and kadi metaltalin. And says Rav Chiza in this case, And he says over here that this is not something that's a smachta. In other words, we hold a smachta like kind of knows something that you don't think will happen. In other words, if I don't go ahead and pay you, then this star, then you could go ahead and collect from the metaltalin. With the labor types of star, and this is a real star, this is not just a star that they used to go ahead and copy from. So over here, there is a scenario where if you acquired it through the karka, that it would be subject to a lien. So Gemara says, in other words, he bought it and then he sold it immediately where there was no loan in between. Maybe over there, when I borrowed the money from Alan, I said, I'm going to go ahead and acquire metaltalin and with land, and maybe that land and the metaltalin will be subject to this loan and could be used as credit. And therefore, if it is liened, and therefore I have stake in this in the coat staying with the buyer, and therefore I'm no gay because my creditor can go ahead and take it. So learn from here. All right. So he said over here. So should we go ahead and learn the dikli kana machar? Right. Kana v'yarei shlomishtavi. Right. The person goes ahead and says that he will go ahead and that if he says he will go ahead and purchase, and he does go ahead and purchase and sells it, then he could, if he acquires it, then he could be harish in such a case, lo mishtabing, right? In this case, they will not be mortgaged. In other words, if you're saying that if he says it, the guy can still testify, it must be it doesn't work. So Mara says, no, like the coming agent, they're witnesses there who say that he doesn't have land at all. And therefore, if he doesn't have land, he won't be able to go ahead and acquire other properties that will have a lien on it. And therefore, that they know in this case that he will not subsequently acquire these things that will be subject to the loan. Even though the Rabbanan say that one who goes ahead and sells the field to somebody else without any achrayus, and then his creditor comes and he takes it. Ein chayzer love, right? Since over there, I sold it. Right, in the case of Mark, right? I sold him. It was I said 0 warranty. It could be taken away, could be not. And if it goes away, ein chayzer love. However, it means sheina shaloi chayzer love. And it turns out, let's say it was stolen, right? Not a case of where, let's say, someone else had a lien before, and that's why it was taken away. Perhaps it was. I never owned the land in the first place, and therefore I had no right to sell it. In such a case, then I would owe money, right? Such a case means so no, there is a case of where I am no gay b'davar, right? In other words, for being a creditor, is being creditor to the fact that I never owned it. Such a case. As the Gemara says, but no, over here we're talking about a case where that he does recognize that this is, let's say, the animal that was born to him, and therefore it was known to be his, and therefore there is no shaila knows that that he would owe him money because it was never his, because we know for a fact it was his. However, Rav Tzvi Omar, I feel it means but even if you say that it turned out it was never his, Eino Chayzer Alav, he does not have to go ahead and reimburse him for selling him something that he never owned. This is the reason why I sold to you without a chrayas. I sold it to you without any sort of warranty. So therefore, you took the risk, you knew up front, and therefore, even if it was never mine, you still can't go back to the seller to go ahead and collect your money. All right, we'll stop here at the Gufa. Shkirek, everybody. Continue from here. Everyone have a wonderful day and enjoy the beautiful weather.